When my dad's will made me a millionaire, my wife came crawling back, but she had left me when I was at my lowest, taking care of him while he was dying. I'm 36 years old and have been married for 8 years, with 2 kids. I'm also my father's only son. For years, my dad has battled kidney disease, but in the past 2 or 3 years, his health has taken a steep decline. He now needs dialysis twice a week. At first, he could handle the trips on his own, but over the past year, he's grown so frail that he started asking me to go with him. Watching him get weaker every day is heartbreaking. I've built my routine around being there for him. I made it my responsibility to take him to dialysis every time. It's twice a week, Saturdays and Wednesdays. Saturdays aren't an issue since it's my day off. On Wednesdays, my boss was kind enough to let me leave work early and make up the hours by staying late at night once I got home. I've worked at this company for 10 years, and my boss has always seen me as hardworking and reliable, so he didn't think twice about approving my request. The real problem wasn't at work, though. It was at home with my wife, Amy, who's 34. When Amy found out I'd committed to taking my dad to dialysis twice a week, she wasn't happy. To be honest, she never liked it when I helped him out, even on occasion, but she used to keep her feelings to herself. This time, though, she couldn't hide her irritation. She told me straight up that I was wasting my time on him and that, no matter what I did, he'd never appreciate me. To give you some backstory, my dad owned a successful merchandising business and was fairly wealthy. When I was younger, he wanted me to follow in his footsteps and eventually take over the business. But I had other plans. I was passionate about technology and wanted to get into software development. After high school, instead of enrolling in a business or management program like he hoped, I pursued a degree in computer science, AT first. Dad didn't mind as long as I was still open to joining the family business after college. But once I graduated, I got a job at a reputable tech company instead. That's when the tension between us really started. Dad felt betrayed that I'd chosen to work for someone else instead of carrying on his legacy. Things came to a head after I got married. Dad asked me one last time if I'd take over the business, and when I said no, he lost his temper. He told me he'd leave all his money to charity and that I wouldn't see a dime. I didn't back down. By then, I was doing well for myself. I'd bought a car and my own house by the time I was 29. I was confident I could provide for my family without relying on his wealth. I even told him outright that I didn't need his money and would build my own success. After that, our relationship took a serious hit. 5 years ago, my mom passed away from a heart attack. Losing her crushed my dad. I'd been living on my own since I was 17, first for college and then for work, so my mom was the only constant presence in his life. Her death left him completely alone. That's when our relationship began to mend. I started visiting him regularly, bringing my kids so they could spend time with their grandpa. Over time, he retired from his business and handed it over to a trust to manage. My wife, Amy, has never really gotten along with my parents. Back when my mom was alive, Amy avoided visiting them as much as possible, always saying that my mom was too intrusive and that they didn't see eye to eye. When my dad told me he planned to remove me from his will, Amy didn't hold back. She openly called my parents mean-spirited and unfair. I tried to get her to stay out of it, to let me handle my relationship with my parents, but she kept butting in. She'd argue that Dad's decisions could impact our future, especially our kids. No matter how many times I assured her that we were financially secure without his wealth, she just wouldn't let it go. Fast forward to now, and things have only gotten worse. When Amy found out I'd committed to taking Dad to dialysis twice a week, she made it clear she wasn't happy. I tried to explain that Dad doesn't have anyone else to rely on. His parents have been gone for years, and while he has an older brother, the man lives across the city and rarely visits. After my mom passed away, Dad became incredibly lonely, and I can't just abandon him in his time of need. But Amy doesn't see it that way. She's turned this into a constant source of conflict. Every Saturday, she'll come up with some plan to disrupt my schedule. Whether it's hosting a party, deep cleaning the house, taking the kids out, or even something as minor as picking up groceries. I've told her repeatedly that she can plan whatever she wants for Sunday since Saturday is reserved for Dad's dialysis, but she doesn't care. Instead, she'll stick to her plans, and when I can't join or show up late, she lashes out with sarcastic comments or angry outbursts. Wednesdays are just as bad. Even though I've arranged with my boss to make up for the hours I miss after taking Dad to dialysis, Amy finds ways to make things harder. She'll go out in the evening to see her family, catch up with old friends, or attend random events, leaving me to handle everything at home. On those nights, I'm juggling everything. I cook, feed our younger child, take care of both kids, and somehow still try to finish my work from the office. This is all after a long day at work and a trip to the dialysis center. It's exhausting. Dad started noticing how overwhelmed I am. He's even suggested letting the nurse take him to his appointments, saying he feels bad seeing me so stressed and rushed. I hate that he feels this way, but Amy's behavior leaves me no choice. Most days, I'm in such a hurry that I barely spend any time with Dad. I ask him to be ready and waiting outside when I arrive to pick him up. I don't linger after dropping him off. I just rush back home. Dad has a full-time nurse and caretaker, so he's not alone, but I still feel guilty. Those 30-minute drives to the dialysis center used to be a time for us to chat about my childhood or reminisce about better times. Now, all I can think about is getting back as fast as possible to avoid Amy's wrath. I've even started driving recklessly, taking shortcuts, overtaking other cars, and speeding through traffic, just to shave a few minutes off the trip. It's not safe, and I know it. But the constant pressure from Amy has turned something that should be meaningful into a race against time. This is one of the few moments I have to connect with Dad, and I refuse to give that up or pass it off to the nurse. I still have a duty as his son, even if it's exhausting. But honestly, I don't know how much longer I can endure my wife's behavior. Update 1. Things are going from bad to worse. Amy seems determined to make me stop caring for Dad. She keeps saying it's pointless, that Dad has already taken me out of his will and donated his wealth to charity. In her eyes, I'm just wasting my time and energy. I can't wrap my head around her perspective. Do we only do things for others when there's something to gain? What about people whose parents have no money or assets? Should they abandon them just because there's no inheritance waiting? After months of putting up with her constant tantrums, I finally snapped. I told her that since she's not going to inherit anything from her parents either, why does she visit them so often? That hit a nerve. She completely lost it and shouted, "My parents are nothing like your greedy father. They supported me through everything. They didn't disown me the way your father did, just because you didn't want to run his business. Don't you dare compare them to your father." This kind of argument has become a regular feature of our home. Almost every Wednesday and Saturday, after I get back from taking Dad to dialysis, we have another blowout. And it's only getting worse. What used to be fights between just the two of us have turned into her yelling in front of our kids. She's even started bad-mouthing my dad to the children, trying to turn them against both him and me. I overheard her once and stepped in, but that just led to another screaming match. It's unbearable. These fights have become so routine that on the rare days she doesn't pick one, I feel like something's off, only for her to double down and come back even more aggressive the next day. I've nearly given up. I don't yell back anymore or even bother to argue. I just ignore her, pretending she isn't even there. But what else can I do? There's no way I'm going to abandon my father just to make her happy. I couldn't care less about the will or his money. I made my choices and Dad made his. He had every right to disinherit me after I hurt him by refusing to join his company. That business was like his child, and he must have been crushed when he had to hand it over to a trust instead of me. Sometimes, I wonder if this is karma, coming back to punish me for the pain I caused my dad. Meanwhile, my dad's health continues to deteriorate. He's so frail now that he can barely walk without help. Even stepping down to the car is a struggle for him. I used to rush things, asking him to wait outside so I could save time, but not anymore. These days, I go inside to help him walk slowly to the car, supporting him every step of the way. After dialysis, I make sure he's comfortably settled in bed before I leave. His shortness of breath has gotten worse, so I take extra care, matching his pace and being cautious with how I drive to avoid anything that might raise his heart rate. I've stopped worrying about getting home quickly. It never helped anyway. Whether I rushed back or not, I'd still face Amy's anger. So, I decided that if I'm going to deal with her wrath, I'd rather at least give Dad the care and attention he deserves. But my change in attitude has only made things worse with Amy. Just yesterday, she gave me an ultimatum: choose between her and my dad. I tried to reason with her, explaining that Dad doesn't have much time left. His condition is so severe that I doubt he'll be with us much longer. Her response was cruel and heartless. Then you better choose wisely, someone who's going to be around forever or someone who's about to die. Her words stunned me, but I didn't hold back. I told her, you know what? I'd rather choose my dying father than someone as selfish and heartless as you. That was the breaking point. She packed her bags and left. I didn't stop her. Honestly, I think we both needed the space. She needed time to cool down, and I needed time to breathe without her constant negativity. Since she left, I've been juggling everything on my own. The house, the kids, my work, and taking care of Dad. And yet, I feel a strange sense of peace. Without her around, there's no tension, no fights, just quiet. It's been a relief, if I'm being honest. Then, 2 days ago, she sent me divorce papers. I can't say I was entirely surprised, but I didn't think it would happen so quickly. At first, I was shocked, but as I sat with it, I realized I felt relieved. I didn't call her or try to argue. I just signed the papers and sent them back. The most surprising part? She didn't even ask for custody of the kids. That was my biggest worry, but it turns out she didn't want them. When she received the signed papers, she called me in a rage, yelling about how I could sign them without even trying to call her or beg her to stay. Can you believe that? Her mother even got on the phone, screaming that I should have acted like a man and tried to fix the marriage instead of just letting it end. I couldn't help but laugh. Why would I fight to save a marriage she clearly wanted out of? She asked for a divorce, and I gave her exactly what she wanted. I couldn't resist taunting her. I pointed out that she had abandoned her own children, walking away without a second thought. Her response? You can keep all your assets, including the kids. I don't want any of it. Her mother tried to defend her, saying Amy was still young and didn't want the baggage of raising kids. That was fine by me. I'd rather have my kids with me anyway. While I feel an enormous sense of relief, I can't ignore the fact that my kids are struggling, especially my younger one. They miss their mom, and it breaks my heart. Managing everything, work, parenting, taking care of Dad, on my own has been tough. But I'll do whatever it takes to get through this for them. Just a quick update this time. I decided to move into Dad's house with my kids, and honestly, it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made. Huge thanks to everyone who suggested it. It's worked out better than I could have imagined. Living with Dad has been great for all of us. He now has the joy of my kids' company, and they absolutely love spending time with their grandpa. Dad's full-time caregiver even agreed to help look after the kids for a small raise. It's a win-win situation, someone to watch over my kids while under Dad's supervision. I couldn't ask for a better arrangement. It warms my heart to see Dad laughing and playing with the kids. They've brought so much joy into his life, and in turn, he's become such a bright light in theirs. Amy definitely didn't see this coming. I'm sure she thought divorcing me would leave me drowning in responsibilities. Handling the kids, taking care of Dad, maintaining a house, and managing my job. But guess what? Everything has fallen into place perfectly. Honestly, the divorce was the best thing that could have happened to me. I'm definitely having the last laugh here. Update 3. I'm sad to share that Dad passed away last week. He passed peacefully in his sleep after a joyful evening playing with my kids. He went to bed content and simply didn't wake up. The doctor, his nurse, and even his caregiver all said that moving in with him made a huge difference in his life. They believe it added several months to his time with us. He had been close to giving up before we moved in. Losing Dad has been devastating. He was my only remaining parent, and his absence is deeply felt. But I'm comforted knowing he spent his final months surrounded by love and happiness. My kids are heartbroken too, but Dad left them with valuable lessons. He taught them to accept life's realities and to keep moving forward because life doesn't stop for anyone. Hearing them talk about the wisdom Grandpa shared makes me so proud. They are my biggest source of strength right now. But there's something else, a completely unexpected twist. Shortly after Dad's passing, his lawyer contacted me, asking me to come to his office to discuss Dad's will. I told him it wasn't necessary. I already knew Dad had left everything to the trust. I even asked if I needed to move out of Dad's house, assuming it was also going to the charity. The lawyer just laughed and insisted I come in. When I arrived, The trust members were already there. The lawyer began reading Dad's will, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was named as his heir. He left me everything: his business, his house, and his entire estate. I was overwhelmed with emotion, tears streaming down my face. I asked the lawyer if Dad had recently changed his will, thinking he must have done it after I started caring for him. But the lawyer just smiled and told me the truth. The will had never been altered. I was always Dad's heir, and I broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the realization that my dad never truly abandoned me. Looking back, I think his threats to disown me were just his way of pushing me to take over the family business and carry on his legacy. As I cried, the lawyer tried to console me, but I couldn't stop. I told him how much it hurt to think I'd spent so much of Dad's life disappointing him, only to learn now how much he had cared for me all along. That's when the lawyer shared something that stopped me in my tracks. He said Dad had actually been incredibly proud of me, not just for pursuing my passion, but for standing firm against his pressure to give it up. According to the lawyer, Dad had admired my courage and was happy to see me chase my dreams, even at the cost of giving up our generational wealth. Hearing that meant the world to me. The lawyer went on to explain that I now had full control over the business. If I wanted, I could take it back from the trust and run it myself. The thought hit me hard. I'd spent years building my career on my terms, but now it felt like the right time to honor Dad's legacy. I decided then and there to reclaim the company and grow it to the heights Dad had always dreamed of. When I got home, I shared the news with my kids, letting them know about Grandpa's will. He had even set aside a portion of his wealth for them to receive when they turned 18. Later that day, we visited Dad's grave with flowers, spending time in quiet reflection. It was an emotional experience for all of us, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of sorrow and gratitude. Update 4. You know what they say, when the sugar candy shows up, so do the ants. A month after Dad's passing, I officially began taking over the business and even got involved in the community service projects he had started. First, I quit my job to fully dedicate myself to the company. Then, I rented out my house because my kids and I had decided to stay at my parents' place. This house is filled with memories of my childhood, and for my kids, it's a way to stay connected to Grandpa. None of us want to leave it. As news spread about me inheriting Dad's $1 million estate, visitors started trickling in. Long-lost relatives, old friends, and neighbors I hadn't seen in ages. But the biggest surprise came when Amy showed up, with her parents in tow. They walked into the house, tears streaming down their faces, claiming they had no idea Dad had passed away and would have attended the funeral if they'd known. Her parents launched into a speech about how wonderful my dad was, while Amy hugged the kids, crying about how much she missed them. I couldn't hold back. I asked her flat out, if you missed them so much, why haven't you tried to see them in the past 7 or 8 months? She stammered some excuse about going to our old house and finding it locked. I called her out on her nonsense. If you were so worried, why didn't you reach out? Why didn't you try to make sure the kids were okay? She had no answer. That's when her parents chimed in, trying to play peacemakers. They suggested we put the past behind us and reconcile for the sake of the children, saying they needed a mother now that my dad was gone and I'd be busy with work. I laughed in their faces. The kids needed her most when she abandoned them, and now they've adjusted to life without her. I made it clear I have no intention of letting her back into my life. Amy started crying. Her parents stepped out to give us privacy, and she grabbed my hands, pleading for reconciliation. Amy claimed she loved me and missed the kids, but I couldn't hold back my disbelief. I laughed and said, let's be real. You don't love me. You love the money my dad left behind. You and your greedy parents are only here to leech off my wealth. I don't regret saying that about her parents because it's exactly what they are, opportunists. Amy had the audacity to call my dad greedy and mean during our divorce, and there was no way I was going to let this woman get even a cent of his hard-earned fortune. She got offended, of course, and accused me of insulting her family. Then she switched tactics, saying she had been pleading with me out of love, but now she'd take what she claimed was rightfully hers. She didn't ask for alimony during the divorce, but now she was demanding half of what I had inherited, half of my dad's wealth. To be exact, I wasn't fazed. I told her to do whatever she wanted, but I would destroy her before I let her take anything. Furious, She hurled insults at me before storming out. After she left, I immediately discussed the situation with my lawyer. He reassured me that her chances of winning were slim. The divorce was finalized over a year before I received the inheritance, and since the kids were with me, it was highly unlikely she'd be entitled to anything. However, he did warn me to be cautious about letting her spend time with the children. If she managed to manipulate them, she could potentially file for custody and use them as leverage for financial demands. I couldn't be more grateful for his advice. From now on, I plan to supervise any interactions between her and the kids. At the same time, I've been making an extra effort to spend more quality time with them. Losing their grandpa has been tough, and I want to be their main source of emotional support so they don't feel the need to turn to their mom for comfort. Taking over Dad's company has given me a lot more flexibility to focus on my personal life and well-being. I'm planning to take the kids on a much-needed vacation to the Bahamas. Why not? They've been through so much, and they deserve a chance to relax and enjoy themselves. This isn't about overspending Dad's wealth. I could have afforded a trip like this even before all of this happened. The difference is that back then, I didn't have the time because I was juggling work and caring for Dad. Now that I do, I want to create some joyful memories with my kids. As for Amy, she hasn't contacted me since that visit. I suspect she's busy running from one lawyer's office to another, trying to figure out how to take me to court.